Ladies and gentlemen, the play is the thing, with your host, Judy Sleed. Today's guest, T.E. McMorrow, author, reporter, and theater critic for the East Hampton Star. Now here's Judy.
Thank you so much. That was a lovely introduction.
It was.
Hi, Tom.
Hi. Thank you very much for having me on.
I'm so happy that you're finally here, and I got to talk to you, and I'm going to find out all about you. You do a lot of things. You work for this newspaper, you write stories, and you're a critic and all that. So how long have you been with the Star?
Well, I started with the Star. My first story was back in 2009. And it's funny because I came to the newspaper business late in life after many other misadventures. I was in the post office of the Montauk Post Office one day. And I heard the clerks talking about two employees of the post office who were being forced to commute from Brooklyn to Montauk during the summer. Wow. And I heard this, and I said, that is a newspaper story. I mean, and so I started working on it. I didn't have an outlet, and I called the editor of the Star, David Rattray, and at first he was hesitant. He said, we don't really use outsiders, but I kept working the story, and I sent it to him, and he liked it, and ended up front page, top of the fold in August, which is nice. And so that sort of set up a relationship, which for a couple of years was just freelance. But I went on staff end of 2011, beginning 2012, and since then I cover crime, I cover some local politics, zoning, and planning, and also theater.
So very different crime stories, and you cover the theater and what goes on there. So then you got to see all what's going on here.
Yes, and East Hampton and the East End, not just East Hampton, because you have to include Sag Harbor, have really a very thriving theater community, and it's growing, and I think this season that's coming is going to be a very, very exciting season, starting with Conviction, a new drama by Carrie Krim that's receiving its premiere at the Bay Street, directed by its new artistic director, Scott Schwartz, who's a wonderful, creative human being. And the play itself, I have to review it, so you have to hold off making judgments, but I'm very excited by it. I really am. And of course, you have Red at Guildhall. It just looks like
Josh Gladstone.
Yes.
He was my very first guest when I started this show.
Well, that must have been an interesting show.
10 years ago.
Josh is very colorful. He really is. He's a wonderful, creative person.
Exactly. Wonderful. He can do anything.
Yes.
He's a great actor. He could play any part.
I love watching him on stage.
Yes.
I saw him, I've seen two different sides of him. I saw him with Kate, his wife.
His wife.
In Anne Frank. And I also saw him playing Captain Hook in Peter Pan.
Yes.
And that was the scenery is still intact. But
Harvey, is that with that? He did Harvey also.
Oh, okay.
The rabbit.
Yes. So he's a very, very talented. I've seen him do Shakespeare. He's very talented and well-rounded, and he's very theatrical.
Yes.
He's fun.
Yes.
Which is what we go to theater for.
I like him a lot. I always praise him.
Well, he deserves it. So, I mean, with theater, the theater community here, I feel, is on the verge of a really big season and future. So I'm very excited about that. The crime, I guess there's a connection. There's a certain theatricality to courtrooms. There's a certain, I came today from Jason Lee, the Goldman Sachs, former Goldman Sachs, I've learned today, managing director who was accused of raping a girl last year, a 20-year-old Irish student. And that's been working its way through the court process. And where it's going to go, no one knows, but it was very dramatic today because there was a request for an order of protection, and it's a lot of different details, but there's a certain drama in a courtroom that I love.
Of course, I love to watch courtroom dramas on
Yes.
television.
And real dramas. You know, when you go to a court, even the most mundane thing has its moments, has its very theatrical moments, and I enjoy that. And obviously, it's unfortunate. It's the darker side of humanity, and sometimes you deal with unpleasant things, and that's part of the job. So, but overall, I think it paints a picture of humanity, just as theater does in its own way.
Well, I think because you enjoy it, you do a good job.
Well, thank you. I try. I try.
So where did you grow up, Tom?
Well, my dad, and you know this because you knew my uncle,
Yes,
Uncle
very
Fritz, who was a newspaper man, and my dad was a newspaper man. And we lived close to them. My uncle Fritz, who ended up with the Times, he was at the Long Island Press when you knew him.
Yes.
And my parents lived close to them, so that we got to.
Well, he lived in Baldwin.
Right, and we were in West Hempstead.
West Hampton.
Yeah, so not next to each other, but close enough that
Yes.
we could, get together on all important occasions and, weekends and so forth.
And you were an only child.
No, two big sisters who used to slug me around when I was a kid. Yeah.
The big sister.
Yes, until one day I popped them back, and that was the end of that. But I was there until I was 7, and then my parents moved to Forest Hills, and I went to Forest Hills High School. I went to Queens College, and I dropped out of Queens College to pursue a life in theater, which...
Oh, really?
Well, I used to go, it's funny, I used to go to the Daily News, and where my father was working, and I thought, gee, I really would like to be a newspaper man. And the old timers used to say, forget it, kid, it's a dying business. So, so I took their word at it and made the great career choice of chasing, the acting dream. But in the end, I've ended up, I think, where I'm supposed to be. It's just
You
took a while.
did some acting?
Oh yeah, I did acting in New York and commercials and that sort of thing. But I never could establish myself. And but the good thing now for me is that in that process of acting, I studied with some of the great masters. Stella Adler, Sanford Meisner, these are people who came from group theater. And having had that training today is just, you can't replace it, from my job as a critic, or even not as a critic, just to talk about theater, just to write about theater. So it's funny because I've made so many different stops. I mean, I was a manager at Boulez in the city for many years. Worked with David Boulez in that high rarefied chef world. And I've had all these stops. I think all of them have given me a nice basis for where I am now, given me a sense
You're
of...
well-rounded.
I think so.
Yes.
I try. I try. And I know we started talking about it before. I have a children's book coming out.
Yes, I'm
Now-
very interested about how that came about.
Well, it's a very long story, as I started telling you.
We have to condense it.
We're going to condense this long story. It's a
Yes.
children's book. Everything is condensed. But it was originally sold to HarperCollins children's division about 8 years ago, I think it was.
They
And
actually paid you for it?
they actually paid me money. It was incredible. You mean I get paid? Okay, to write. That's great. So I got the advance, but the book languished on a shelf and never went anyplace. Last summer, right at the height of the craziness that is East Hampton, is the Hamptons in the summer.
Yes, yeah.
My agent called me up, Scott Gould. He called me and he said there's an editor at HarperCollins who's trying to reach you. And
Can't find you.
couldn't find me. So I said,
Just
well,
like me, I couldn't find you.
well, you found me, and I'm glad you did, because, but the editor, her name is Abigail Ranger, and she saw the book sitting on a shelf someplace, saw the manuscript, and she told me that she liked it, and she had an illustrator who was interested in it. His name is James Ransom. But, would I be interested, would I be open to the idea of doing a total rewrite? And I took about 2 seconds and maybe paused for 3 more just to make it sound like I'm thinking about it.
Yeah.
Maybe I moved the pages of my calendar and I said, yes, I will do a total rewrite. And
Well, it's very interesting. As somebody said, I like it, but you have to rewrite the whole thing. Well, if she liked it, why did you have to change it?
it was the idea and the concept that she liked. It was the setting. It's called Nutcracker in Harlem, and it's set in Renaissance Harlem in the 1920s. And when you have
And this is a story for children that you have dreamed about. Very, very interesting. Renaissance Harlem.
Yes, with the artists and the painters that were around then, and she was a wonderful editor to work with. She really was. She was.
You mean when the rewrite, was it the
Yes.
style? You had to put a different slant on the way you put the sentences?
Well, I would say, first of all, I really needed to learn. I needed to learn children's book, picture book writing.
What age group?
I don't know. I think all people. I think young and old.
I
will
mean,
like,
it can't be, because I had written a children's book that's strictly like for 4 or 5-year-olds.
right. I would say a little older. I would say more like 7, 8, 9. But one of the keys for me that I learned working with Abby is that with a children's book, you really think of the parent as well as the child, because a parent's going to be reading it. And you think about the page turn. Those page turns are so important. You want the child and the parent, you want to get to what could she do? Turn the page. Ah, there's what she could do. It's a fun, it's fun. Once I realized it, I'm working on another one, but it's summertime in the Hamptons now, so I don't think that'll happen for a while. But this Nutcracker in Harlem is 2016. The reason why it's so far away is that it's specifically a Christmas book. So Christmas books have to be launched in a certain time frame. And
Well, that's a different story. I mean, it's not, to write a story is one thing, but to have it circulate and
Yes.
To sell it, it's almost impossible.
it is, and I feel just lucky and blessed.
Yeah, I'm very glad for you that it happened. It must be a very good story.
I hope so. I hope you'll read it.
I want to. I want to read it, definitely.
And I'm looking forward to the illustrations. James Ransom is a man who illustrates via painting. It's the old school, like painting a painting for the page. And as far as I know, because I've looked at so much of his work, and it usually says, it doesn't say illustrated by, it says paintings by.
Oh,
frequently.
really?
Yes.
Paintings by.
Yes. So I'm really looking forward
So
to
it's
seeing
going to
what
be a really beautiful book.
I hope
It
so.
will be. I could just picture it, a hardcover with big pages. and so the children could look at beautiful pictures and read the story.
Yes, yes. And again, it's also about the communication from the child to the parent as the parent reads and as the child learns to read.
How do you happen to think about a story like that?
It really was a suggestion of my wife's. We were working on a theatrical piece, which was using the Nutcracker. And I was playing around with different ideas, and I came up with that one. That it made sense for where we were, what we were doing at the time. And I did it originally as treatment for the stage, but when my wife suggested that we go to HarperCollins, my agent said, well, someone's got to write this, why don't you try? And I said, okay. And
Okay.
I did, and she sold it, so it was
Your
good
wife
moment.
is an artist also?
Yes, Carol Davis, she was a theatrical agent for many years. She was an actress. We actually met backstage. I was a stagehand, and she was an understudy in a production of Auntie Mame, or Mame, not Auntie Mame, that's the straight version, but the musical Mame, at the North Stage Dinner Theater in Glen Cove, and that's how we met.
Oh,
And she's a
Very-
great singer
that
and a
was
great comedian.
back quite many years ago.
Yes, yes, and it was a great theater to work at. Here again, I'm going back into theater, but it was a great theater to work at because it was a hemp house. It was an old hemp house. Today, kids, you just push a button, things go up
Yeah.
and down.
Yeah.
Back then, you had to jump on the rope and yank it down to make things move up or down, the curtain or set pieces. But that's how we met.
That's interesting also.
Well,
Is she still doing that?
no, she's now managing. She manages a dancer named Cartier Williams, a wonderful tap dancer, and that's the area now she's in. But she's out here, so she works out here too. But her theater life now is managing, and mine is, I guess, reviewing and writing.
Writing, yes. So how did you happen to come to the Hamptons?
I was working at the time at Boulay as a manager. It's a 4-star restaurant in New York, and the demands were incredible. I mean, time-wise, it just was a very tough job. And my wife said, why don't we go to Montauk? And so we took a weekend. We went out to Montauk. We went to the Panoramic Inn. And because when you knew Fred, my uncle, and my father had that house in Fire Island, I'm sure he
Oh, yes. Oh, my gosh. There was a fire. The house burned down. Fred talked about it all the times, all the things that he lost there.
Yeah, no, it was a very sad loss for them. But prior to that, I was going out there every summer. Or not, no, actually they were renting during the summer. My memory is summer, but I've learned since then that the place was rented out for the summer season, but we would go, in September and May. And the sound of the ocean coming in and the feel of the ocean, when I went to the Panoramic Inn with my wife that time, I thought, wow, isn't this what I grew up with? Isn't this what I want? And that's really what brought us out here.
Yeah. You just came out once and you fell in love with the Hamptons.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Happens to a lot of people. Yeah.
It does.
It's very inspiring, especially for artists, actors and painters. They all flock to the Hamptons.
I think there is something about the air, the light, the ocean.
Yes.
There's something about it that for an artist I think is inspiring, is rejuvenating. and I think that's why we do have the community that we have out here,
Right.
that we're really blessed with.
A lot of talent.
Yes.
A lot of
Yes.
talent. So did you mention you're working on you started working on another book?
Yes.
Is, is that going to be your new career, writing books?
Well, I think, it's funny because the lag time between this book coming out, 2016, guarantees that I will be a reporter for the East Hampton Star for the next couple of years. So, but I mean, who knows? Until it's sold, it's just an idea. But yes, there's something I'm working with.
Well, of course, you have one book that's a success. You have no problem doing, even just like an idea, they're already going to buy it.
I hope so, but
That's the way it works. All you need is one success, and then you're a star.
From your lips to God's ear,
Absolutely.
yeah, because there is an idea, but again, time is always an issue with writing because you really need to lock yourself in and close out the world when you're working on something like that.
Well, you see, something like that, you could just, when you wash dishes, you could just think about the story.
Oh, yes.
Or
Yes.
when you're vacuuming or washing the floors.
Yes.
Or any time where you just think, I mean, that's what happens to me.
Right.
It just comes.
Right.
It just comes.
And you wake up in the morning and say, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I've got a new,
Yes.
a new page. Yeah. The only thing, though, is that during the season is very demanding if you're working at the East Hampton Star. I mean, it is just I remember Jennifer Landis, the arts editor, a wonderful editor at the Star, as all the editors are.
Mm-hmm.
Jennifer warned me my first year at the Star. She said, when the summer comes, it's like you're in free fall. You're just going and you can't, you don't have time to
do anything.
You just keep working and working and working. So that makes it difficult to get back to the art, really during the summer, because you really do have to dedicate yourself. And I write thousands of words a week, probably 4,000 or 5,000 words. So it's a lot of writing, and you keep going. But September's not far away.
Right.
So I will get back to hard work on the book in September.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. Yes. And you're a theater critic. And do you get letters saying, "How dare you say that about me"?
Mostly it's people who've been arrested who call me up saying, how dare you say that about me? And it's not my fault. It just happened, That's actually one of the things that I do deal with at the paper, and it's unfortunate. And you have to really, when you're writing about somebody who's had something go wrong, you need to, you have to have a certain perspective, it's because they may have committed a crime, but also they're in pain, so you have to, but I do have people call me up, I would say on an almost weekly basis, complaining about something that's in the paper that from 2 years ago.
2 years, wow.
Yes, and they'll say, can you take my name out of the website? No, I can't. You have to talk to the editor.
Oh, really?
He's the only person who can do that.
That's funny you should mention that, because I've been doing this show like for, like for 10 years, and then I upload them on YouTube.
Right.
And then some people call and say, could you please take it off there?
No.
Yes.
Really?
Because, I hated the way I looked, or I was just starting out in a business. If somebody's going to see me, it's very bad. Yes.
And what's your answer?
Okay, I'll take it off.
See, at the East Hampton Star, I think David Rattray is a little tougher than you are, because if there's something wrong, he'll take it off. And again, it's always his call. But once we publish something, it is the news. It's part of.
Yes, yes.
And it's something I have no control over. So when people write me, I just tell them I have no control over it.
Yes.
And once it's written, you go someplace. You have to
So
go
you better be
upstairs.
careful what you do, what you say.
Yeah, yeah, sadly.
And the same thing here. I always tell people, this show is not going to be edited, so whatever you say
goes out there.
Yeah.
Well, have I been good? I haven't said anything bad, have I? I want to make sure. I don't know. Yeah, but
Have you done any shows like this before?
I did a couple of. Yeah, I actually was involved in. Most people out here will think I'm crazy for this. I was involved in when the Jets wanted to get a stadium built on the west side of Manhattan. I actually liked the idea, unlike the rest of my neighbors. At that time, I was in Chelsea, and actually, I mean, we still are. We still have an apartment in Chelsea, which really, to me, is my home. But because we're renters out here, which is not easy. But the Jets wanted the stadium, so I worked on it sort of as with community people, those who were in support of it, unions and so forth, and I did a couple of interviews on TV, and that was a lot of fun.
Well, you have to, after this is done, it's going to go out there, you have to be ready to write autographs.
Oh. Well, I don't know about that. Maybe you're the one who should be writing the autographs.
Well, I want to thank you for coming, and I want to thank Lupita for doing my hair, and I want to thank all my underwriters, and I want to thank Jeff, my son, the boy, directing.
It was a pleasure meeting him, and he knew my Uncle Fritz.
Yes, and Lena. And this is another episode. And you could watch me on YouTube.
I'm going to.
And sometimes you could watch me in Manhattan also.
Okay.
So as I said, it goes all over. You have to be ready. Phone calls will come. Offers from all over the world will come.
Oh.
And you're going to become very famous.
Well, that sounds good to me. Huh?
And you cannot blame me for it.
I won't. I won't. It's been a pleasure coming on here. It really has been. It's really lovely talking to you.